guys. Hello, Satori. Hello, Valence. Welcome in. I'm not sure if I have any mods in the chat to pin any messages right now, but I did ask Psycho Kensho to attend as well as 2 other mods. We'll see who can make it, right? Nobody's forced to do this. Or to be here with me if they can't be. So we'll see how that goes. Valence, I see. Satori, I see. I win first. Yes, you do win first. You just popped in like a second before Valence. Technically, you could both redeem first, second, and third. But you know, however you guys want to do that. How are you guys? I am doing so. Well, that's a lie. I'm actually not doing that great, but I am trying to stick to my word with streaming best I can. Yes, absolutely, Valence. Thank you for mentioning that, Valence. I'm sorry for your loss, Satori. I did mention you also. But that's so nice, Valence, to see that you also saw that Satori has lost his cat. Valence actually had some issues with a cat as well, if I recall. As a cat that he loved very much. If you want to talk about that in the chat, Valence, you can, because I don't remember the whole story, and I apologize if I, bastardized that story. But I know that you had issues with losing your cat as well. Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. It takes some time, to get over the loss of, these little furry family members of ours, It's never just a one-shot type situation from what I've noticed. It was, yeah, that's so, yeah, it's tough, man. I will say, yes, my room is screwed. I am sleeping in my kitchen. And I'm sleeping next to the refrigerator, which is not fun. I don't recommend that for you guys. I'm also on the floor, so it's not very, bed-like or bed feeling. I feel more like a squatter in somebody else's room. Isn't that a new building? No, this is the same place that was leaking. You would think that this jerk of a slumlord, after everything we went through with the other water heater, would have replaced this other water heater, which has now also busted a leak. Excuse my French, but F that house. Yeah, it's seriously, F this house. I'm with you on that. Like, I have no words for how angry I actually am with this landlord. I don't like. I've tried to put myself in their shoes. I tried being patient with everything, and you know what? It's just I just can't, and it has me so stressed right now. And not just that, but other personal things that relational things that I have had going on that they just came out of nowhere. I didn't even do anything to make them happen. Losing people left and right, it's not easy to deal with right now with all of this. And I noticed, and I don't know if you guys saw the announcement, but I noticed I'm isolating. You know, I'm still, thank goodness, taking my time out and spending time with God, but my goodness, am I isolating? I haven't been on the Discord. I haven't been in the Minecraft server. I haven't been playing games with anybody. I haven't been reaching out to, or reaching back out to people that have been reaching out to me. And I'll be honest with you guys, I'm afraid. You know, I'm afraid. I don't want to involve people or invite people into my problems, you know, other than like just a sort of overview type of situation. Because I'm afraid. I feel like I've, you know, had a lot of situations where I've been kind of traumatized against, you know, getting closer to people, and including even people on my streams, people that I've met on stream or on Discord and stuff like that, because it seems that's the place where all that happens. You know, it doesn't happen in my real life, and probably because I can see people face to face, and I can, you know, speak, and people can hear from my tone what I'm saying or how I mean something or don't mean something, whereas, you know, there can be a lot of misunderstandings on text and things. And for me, there definitely has. People have attributed characteristics to me that I don't possess. People have assumed that they know me, they know my life, they know my situation, just from the little bit that I've shared with them, and that's unsafe, you know, I've noticed. So that's why, if any of you guys have been reaching out, I just want to say thank you so much. For reaching out, but that's why it seems like maybe I haven't reached back. You know everything about me? Oh no, let's not get into a parasocial relationship here, you guys. I have a thing on that, by the way. It's on my profile. Please don't be parasocial with the Venus variation. Let me see what I missed here. Saturi said, I just have many cats and numbers. This would be number 6 to go to heaven. Oh my gosh. I have to take it as it comes. It's not decided by us. That's so true. Oh, Cyberfox Nexus, you're out there? Oh my gosh, what a lovely name from the past. Good to see you again, Cyberfox Nexus. Please put something in the chat if you want to. Tell us what you've been up to. It's been a couple months since we've seen you. Thanks for redeeming that, by the way. Valen says, I have a game I want to play with you. Have you ever played Genshin Impact? Oh my gosh. I tried to play Genshin Impact. It's a very big game, and I didn't have space for that on my computer. Honestly, it's not fun, and even the part of feeling stuck. Yeah, I can understand that. I haven't lost a kitten or a cat, oh gosh, knock on wood, as of yet, but I mean, just putting myself in your shoes, I can only imagine what that's like, you know. Valen says, that's because life punched you in the face, Venus. It's understandable that you don't want to play video games or get on when your whole setup. Yeah, it's so much, you know. It just feels like so much. And, you know, I'm not going to cry or anything. And I'm going to be strong, you know, about it. But I do... Oh, thank you so much for posture check. Yes. But I do. I would be lying if I said. Thank you for the hydrate. I appreciate that. I definitely would be lying if I said that, you know, I wasn't hurting or I haven't been affected by these things. Because I totally have, you know. I've been affected by the personal stuff with, you know, people from online, and shattered bridges, and also work to do on myself, and things that have been a revelation to me of things I need to fix so that I can have relationships in the future. And also this home situation, like I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. I mean, I'm not telling you guys like I'm gonna kill, I'm not gonna KMS or anything. But I definitely have been, I just been hurt, I just been hurt and confused, and it's been ongoing for some time. This happened on February 24th, you guys, and I don't know, like it's almost March 24th, and I'm, just now, finally, thanks to Peppy SM, shout out to her, and her gardening knowledge. Just now, this week, there was figured out a way to get the water from the pipe into a very specific group of buckets that we have around the room. And, so I finally don't have to hear the drip, right? But that has taken almost 3.5 weeks of me listening to the drip every single day, 24 hours a day, right next to me. And then having, to breathe in all that stuff from the ceiling, which, had fallen. And we had rats up there and mice up there. And, again, because this freaking jerk does not take care of the place, we had that going on, and we had to pay for that, and we, are basically left with the bag, Z says, if you don't want me being parasocial, stop being adorable. Z, thank you so much for saying that. I don't see how, my being forthright and honest with you guys is adorable, but I would think it would be unattractive, with all these issues, but I appreciate that. I think for the most part, Satori says, excuse me, you guys, let me see what Satori says here. I think for the most part, oh my gosh, I can't even talk. I think for the most part, what makes a person who they are is it's who they are now and who they choose to be when put against challenges. Even something like if you know a person's real name, it doesn't make them who they are. I agree with you. I do feel like, getting to know who a person is actually takes so much time. And a lot of people with streamers, because the nature of us is kind of like being a virtual geisha. We listen to our viewers. We try to entertain our viewers. We somehow cross the line between, knowing and not knowing the streamer and stuff like that, sharing and not sharing. It can get blurred, and since we're not celebrities, we're extremely, well, some of us are celebrities, but obviously they're not as approachable, but sometimes when you're not the celebrity, you can be very approachable. And with me, I do advice, so I do expect, people to be able to feel comfy to open up to me and share things with me. I don't necessarily share back because I don't see chat as my therapist, and I'm not really one to trauma dump and this kind of thing. But I do allow people to do that in my streams, so it can be confusing. It's like, well, if I can do it, then, how come you're not doing it, type of thing. But that would be a false expectation, because for me, working on my codependency means that I don't do that with chat or with anyone, that I have met online. I save those things for in private, and also when I'm in my CODA meetings and my 12-step and stuff like that. But I do share things with you guys, selectively, and hopefully you don't judge me for those things. But I also can't expect, that people are not going to have their own take on things. And again, sometimes that take hurts, especially if it's not something that's true, but I don't control that, so I keep my focus on the things that, I do control, It can be weird, a person through being a good friend showed up when it matters, or because they promised to do something and bring validity in following through. Yes, exactly. So many people feel burned, and then maybe you're also the one who's trying to do something good even for yourself. Yeah. The thing that I'm doing good, I'll tell you guys, and you're gonna probably think, oh my gosh, Venus, what's wrong with you? It's Roblox. Psycho Cat Show, thank you so much for coming. Guys, our one of our mods has come in, so if we have to kick anybody out while I'm Bible reading, or if somebody says something absolutely mean to me while I'm reading and things, Psycho Cat Show will take care of that, right, Psycho Cat Show? You got the ban hammer ready? We're not gonna ban people or kick them, because that doesn't help people to change, but we'll definitely give them a warning and allow them to choose hopefully another behavior, and then if they don't, if they consistently make a bad choice, then go for it. You got the ban hammer. But I will say too that, Roblox, which I never wanted to try, and I had heard about but didn't even care about, because I see it as like a children's game, and I figured that there was no like real people. Well, I'm not saying children are not real people, they are. But I didn't see it as like a space that I don't know, could inhabit, if that makes sense. But then I found Bloxburg, and it happened at a time where I literally don't have anything else under my control, or anything else that I can kind of put my hands around in my home situation, because I don't always have my PC or access to the room, or want to be in the room, because it's kind of become a trauma-related thing, which I hope I can, get help for later on. But dude, Roblox, like, it's been saving me, because who knew, I've been playing Bloxburg, making these little houses, doing these random little jobs, and it gives me a sense of, and yes, I'm basically ignoring every other part of my life right now. That is not lost on me, the irony of that. But just making these little houses and doing these little jobs, and running around the town and things like this, it's really, it's been healing for me. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to worry about anybody abandoning me there. And there's no leaking ceilings in my house in Roblox. And I have my own room and things, and I help people who don't have their own little houses yet and such, and so I've found a way to sort of cope with all of this by escaping, in a sense. But I don't want you guys to think that I don't think about you guys, because I still have. And I don't know if, some of you guys have even gotten some of my messages. I know they've been sporadic in responding to you guys. But I do, before I start, reading these Bible verses, which I want you guys to know, I've been realizing they're more for me than they are for you guys. It's more like a self-edification type of situation, because you guys may not believe these words from the Bible, but for me, when I read them, they empower me, and they help me tremendously, not just to remember who I am now, but all the things I'm still capable of, and that I'm just this little speck, but I'm a speck that's important, and that is loved, and that is cared for, and I haven't been forgotten. And yes, things might not be in my control, but I have someone advocating for me on my behalf. And this all, it means so much to me to be able to share, these verses, which I will share. I haven't yet, but, with you guys. Because I don't know, maybe those verses will also help somebody else, who's watching. And Psycho Kencho, I don't know if it's okay for me to preface this. You let me know in the chat if I can say this. But I recently had a heart-to-heart with Psycho Kencho, who told me that I should have a stream on a very, very specific topic, because although he's not ready to come and talk to us one-on-one about this, he is and does feel strong enough to be ready to share the story of something that has happened to him. But not only that with childhood trauma, but how he's making it through because he now has a relationship with God, and he recognizes that he has a father who loves him, and for many of us, fatherless ones, or those of us who have felt fatherless, in many ways, finding a higher power in this type of situation where we realize, we're not unlovable, and we are worthy, and there is someone who cares about us. They did see all those things that happened to us when we were screaming out and crying out, no and stop, and all of these things. We felt unheard because, we had a violation. But those cries were heard. And so tonight, a lot of the verses that I'm going to be reading are going to be for that, healing that part, and remembering for me, and also for Psycho Kencho too, that, we're no longer that helpless child. We now, have become those who can speak out for those helpless ones. And even, when I'm going through this situation, like here I am still thinking about, these ones and those who are suffering also. I don't put myself above those ones, And I think that's so important. Good evening, chat. Thank you, Kumukishi. Z said, I'm transparent with chat, but I let myself be most vulnerable with my therapist. This is it, Z. This is it. And I feel like that's very, very strong and wise to do, is to know where it's safe for you to be vulnerable, and to take the time to find out who you can be vulnerable with. And then Satori says, that's the thing. Who says Roblox is bad? if it's how you've made space to heal. It is bad though. Like it's, I didn't even consider Roblox a game. Although now I do. Now I would say, you know what? There's people who work extremely hard on these games. And I know why people play Roblox. There's so many options. It's like a mini Steam. It's full of games. They're more for children, but they're still fun games. Obviously you don't want to have a ton of conversations with the children because as we get older, we find we don't relate to them as much. But there's always a common ground if we're willing to look for that. Builder Z says, Ravi, only a crack in this castle of glass. Ooh, I like that. I like that. Kumakishi says, good evening, Chad, and welcome to you, Kumakishi. Z says, I wear my story of abuse and trauma on my sleeve so that not only do people know they're safe with me, but also to showcase that, yes, it will get better. And I haven't been doing that, but I do feel like it's time. I was gonna mainly talk about psychocan shows, but who knows? Maybe I also may touch on my own story time with that as I'm, sharing. And I'm not gonna let you guys lead me in that. I'm gonna take the initiative for myself, depending on how I feel. When I do. And that's another thing that we touched on too, a psychocancho and I, is that a lot of us, when we have experienced trauma and when we have experienced abuse, we tend to subconsciously, and I taught him this, be familiar with others who have also experienced those things, and we feel like there's a closeness there. We quote unquote connect, with these ones, but it's not a healthy connection, especially if they're not aware of how the abuse and how sexual trauma or any trauma has affected them and changed their personality or made them think that certain unhealthy things are normal and such like this. So it may seem like a sort of closeness, and a lot of us end up calling it love or being able to, feel comfy with somebody. But in deeper introspection, we find out that that is not a healthy connection. It's a connection that we make out of familiarity. Kishi says, I had to be up at 5 a.m. for work. 1 Corinthians 13:13. Okay, I will read it. Can we give a tuck in to Kumakishi, who is going to go to sleep very soon? Thank you so much for coming, Kumakishi, and also for sharing that, by the way. Okay, so this one, I had the wrong thingy up there. Oh, gosh. Okay, well, I don't know if it's going to work, but... where the heck is it? Okay, I don't know where it is, but let's not worry about it for today. So what is 1 Corinthians 13:13? Why don't we find out? And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. I think this one was written by Paul. But again, with these type of verses, we have to actually look at what is the context. Who was he talking to? Why did he say this? And that's what I always do. I never just find one verse, but not read, around it. I think that's very, very important. And I don't know that a lot of pastors do that kind of thing. Sorry I couldn't stay longer. Oh, it's fine. It's totally fine. I'm just glad that you were here with us. And I hope that you have a beautiful night. I hope you saw my little tuck in there. We did add that one as a command as well. If you ever want to tuck somebody in, you can too. Exclamation point tuck. Don't forget to get your daily chains if you want to. They will actually end up equaling to something. You guys are not just randomly redeeming chains, by the way, in case you're wondering. Okay, so this one that Kumukishi has shared, I think is beautiful. I am going to read it before we go into the story because I think that there's a lot there to sort of get something from. And I think that this, is a very beautiful picture of the love that God has for us, me specifically, and in a agape love sort of way, which isn't always easy to achieve as humans. But this is the verse. If I speak in tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, trusts, hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection, as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. That is 1 Corinthians 13. And I think it's very interesting that a lot of people will use this as a metric and be like, hey, you don't love me because you're not doing XYZ. What they often don't understand, and believers don't do this very much because I think they have come to an understanding, but many unbelievers don't understand, is that love is impossible without Jesus. That love is impossible without having a relationship with the Father, with God. Because that love that's being described is the way God loves. God is loving us that way. We don't have such an easy time doing that, and we can try to, and I think we should, but that love is agape love, which is the kind of love that we find, with God. And It's very comforting to me to see that. So thank you, Kumukishi, because it reminds me of the kind of love that I can expect from my relationship with God. And I have seen that time and time and time again when even I fail in meeting all of those things. He gives that love to me. He has shown me that love. And even in this terrible situation, he's still showing me that love, and he's still blessing me in this situation. So whatever you guys are going through, whatever's, weighing your soul down, if there is anything, I would like to admonish you, if possible, to step outside of your comfort zone and try to think, maybe this is the love that this higher power has for me. Maybe I too am being loved like this, and I have not noticed when my eyes are on all these other things. My past, my traumas, the things I'm currently suffering, the fears that I have for the future, right? Satori says, I sometimes like to imagine that love is like an ocean. We can take ourselves like a bucket and bring the water from that up to the mountain into our own lives and feed our family and our village. I like that. I think that's a beautiful way to imagine it. You can draw from this bucket. It's much bigger than you, but it's there, and you go and you grab some and you fill your bucket with it. Yes, and I would like to add too that the great thing about God's love and the fullness of a relationship with God is that the bucket doesn't have a little hole at the bottom that's leaking that you need to, close with silly putty or whatever. For me, before I had my relationship with God, I had a leaky bucket. I would always try to fill the bucket with a bunch of things, whether it was people or jobs or becoming rich, becoming a music idol, having as many cars as I could, having as many places to go as I could, having as many drinks as I could, or whatever it was, lots of nights of trying to fill the emptiness of what was essentially my soul. And it was only when I found a relationship with God that I was finally recognizing what it was missing. And I think my heart had a little God-shaped hole that only a relationship with God was going to be able to fill. And now when I give to other people, or when I love other people, and that's what Paul is talking about here. He's not saying if he doesn't have somebody who is in love with him. He's talking about if he doesn't show love, if he doesn't give love to other people, but he speaks in tongues, or he has prophecy, or he has other abilities. Without love, it's nothing. And I think that that's very telling of the kind of person that Paul was. Well, when he was Saul, he was a killer, right? He was actually trying to kill Jesus, and he also killed all the Christians. But as Paul, and if I'm not mistaken, when he was writing to the church of Corinth here, he was like in chains. He was being tortured. He was, suffering greatly, and talking about love. I don't know about you guys, but that would be very difficult for me to do unless I too, had that kind of relationship with God, And Paul definitely had that. He knew, God is with me. Yes, I'm suffering. Yes, I'm in chains. Yes, I'm, going through all these things. But God, but love, right? Because Jesus's main admonition was, how go and love others. People are gonna know that you're with me by the love that you have showing for each others. Because the world under Satan or the devil or whatever you want to call him does not have love, right? It's selfish, it's self-seeking, it's all of these sort of opposite things of what's described here. And being that we're in a fallen world, everybody's like, oh, everything is God's fault. Well, not really, because he's kind of not running this, We gave up our dominion to the enemy, and this is his world, These governments, these systems are under, a fallen and sort of bad spiritual situation. It's not a good one. So when we blame God for things that is happening because of our choices, but also some things not even in our control, like spiritual elements. Those spiritual elements are not because of God. They're because He respected our choice to follow another way, That's why I always tell people, God is not like abusive, He's not banging down your door and forcing you to like do anything, even Lent. Like, I chose to observe Lent, but I don't have to observe Lent. God is not gonna love me less if I don't observe Lent. He's gonna show me eventually and take me aside and slowly care for me, and His love is the thing that's going to make me want to observe Lent. If I recognize it, right? If I even accept it, because a lot of people don't want to accept love. Not from God, but not from anyone, or they don't know how yet, right? Because they're suffering. They haven't had love. They haven't seen love. What they think is love is very often unhealthy or toxic for some people. For some people, what they think love is actually something that's toxic and hurts them. And they repeatedly engage in those things. And that comes from trauma. The making that choice to go towards additional toxicity, that often comes from trauma, and that trauma is not our fault. We often secretly blame ourselves for trauma that has happened to us. That little devil voice that's like, yeah, well, this happened because you're bad, or this happened because you're not good enough, or this happened because no one's ever gonna love you and no one's ever gonna truly care about you. And the truth is that voice is a lie. That's a little seed, a little evil seed that's planted when we're children that we grow up with believing, and it's not true. And that little terrible seed also often, if we look deep enough, is the thing that keeps us from ever wanting to believe or accept that we are lovable, that God in fact does love us. And so I do want to touch on that when I talk about this story with Psycho Kencho, because he has experienced that. He believed these things, and now he doesn't. He recognizes that they're lies. But once you recognize that your entire life has been based on believing these lies, how do you undo that? How do you function in a new space and in essence reparent yourself reparenting yourself is what adulthood, I think, is. The longer I live, I'm recognizing, yeah, my parents did the best they could. They fucked up a lot, effed up a lot. They made a lot of, a lot of mistakes with me. They did a lot of bad things to me. But they were teens. I don't know about your parents, but if they were teens, I mean, look at the teens. Would you expect that teen in your life would be able to have a kid and raise them and not make any mistakes? I don't think so. And I feel like a lot of that blame that we placed on them, which we also do this to God, was unfair. And it's only when we truly learn to understand ourselves and to, understand, wow, none of that stuff that I believed as a kid is actually fully true. I believed that because I was suffering. I believed that because I was a kid and I had to rationalize all of these terrible things that has happened to me, that has been done to me that I never understood. And that knowledge is the thing that frees us, believe it or not. And then once we are able to love ourselves, we start to find, you know what, if God has loved me all this time, I should share that love with other people. I should love other people. If God has sent Jesus and now I have forgiveness, why am I going to withhold that forgiveness for absolutely anybody else? I've been forgiven for terrible things that I've done. Let me, share that forgiveness with others. And that forgiveness is life-changing because we become different people when we're capable of forgiving. The truth is, I think we become like Paul here. Was he a perfect lover at this time? No, he was not loving everybody perfectly, but he tried to. He tried to learn from, okay, what did Jesus do? This is how Jesus was. This is what Jesus said. And I'm going to apply that to this situation. And 9 times out of 10, when he did, which we literally can read about when we read Corinthians, it came out to be something beautiful. In the end, at first, he was like, frustrated or he was upset about things, but then he would write again and you see the growth of him. And I feel like all of us have this. And speaking of growth, if it's okay, Psycho Cancho, I'm going to talk about your story a little bit. Let me read and see what I missed in the chat. Love is the ultimatum in a sense. You have to focus on that or you can't even find God, because the thing is, it's us ourselves that need it to be found, to be loved. Many of us do not know that we even need that, huh, Satori? We don't know that we need love because we've never had it, many of us as children. When we've never even seen it, how can we possibly think to give it to somebody or to get it or to know when we're having it? All of that, there's growth that comes from that path, from that journey. Sergeant Salamander says, God loves each and every one of us. A lot of us have messed up and sinned, but the only way to repent is to ask God to forgive us. God calls us to help others to follow the path to Him. Yes, and if anybody ever listens to us or wants to know, hey, why did you forgive so-and-so? Or, hey, I noticed you're going through a really hard time, but somehow you're still, staying strong. How are you doing that? Or, hey, I noticed that you had this trauma, but you mentioned something about forgiving this person. I could never do that. What has led you to being able to do that? Or, hey, you used to lie all the time, and now you're trying not to lie. People notice when somebody is literally starting to follow Jesus or understand some of what Jesus says or even apply it, people notice. And they usually want to know what the heck, why? Why did you make this change? And at that point, we can either be like, yeah, I'm amazing, or we can be like, it's Jesus, because this is not me. I would not do this on my own. Like, I'm not that amazing. And for me, I always, when people will ask me, and I don't evangelize, as evangelism is known in this country. I try not to do that. And I rarely will talk to people about Jesus unless they ask me, like, hey, why, what is your faith? Or why are you doing X, Y, Z? Or you're so good. I sometimes hear you're so good. I'm not good. I wish I was good, It's Jesus that's good. And when I do the things that he shows me, I can love other people, When I apply the things he's told me, in whatever silly, understanding I have, because I'm not like a Bible scholar, I don't know how to be a Jesus follower perfectly, but whenever I have done it, as best as I can, right? Because none of us are perfect, but it's always been something amazing at the end, And with Psycho Gensho, I did not think he was gonna come to Jesus. I did not think he was gonna become a Christian or any of these things, and he has. He recently was, he was baptized and things like this. And I did speak to him about Jesus, but I never preached to him. It was only usually in relation to myself. But when we talk about childhood trauma and childhood abuse, Psycho Kensho, he went through that. He went through a time in his life where he had sexual abuse. And, those of you who are triggered by this, which rightfully so, that anybody, who hasn't gotten therapy or who hasn't talked about this for years or whatever, this part of the chat or the stream, some things the chat says or myself might trigger you, so trigger warning ahead of time. Many times with sexual abuse, when we have experienced sexual abuse, and I have gotten his okay, that he is ready to share this with you guys. In fact, he's the reason why this stream is on this topic, because he implored me and admonished me, Venus, you have to do a stream on this. You have to talk to people and tell them the things that you're telling me, and the things that I'm sharing with you. I want you to, share with the others, as well as, your wisdom on it. And I only have wisdom because I too have been a victim of sexual abuse. I too have gone through years and years and years of hating, and I mean hating, my abusers, and myself especially. Myself. Hating myself. And that's what we do as kids. When we are the victim of sexual abuse, we turn the hatred, the anger, and all these things inward against ourselves because we're so young. We don't know how or what to do or what to think to turn it outward. And let me know in the chat if you guys have experienced this, or you have found yourself at that young age, anybody who has had this, also hating yourself, blaming yourself for being abused, for being a victim. This is not fair to do to ourselves. But when we were little, we did not know any better. None of us. Psycho Kensho spent years and years blaming himself for that man and the things that that man did. Psycho Kensho can barely remember if he had to point out in a lineup, who was it? Who did this to you? He would not be able to. This is something that our minds do to protect us, you guys, especially when we're young. And the things that have happened to us, there is no better term to describe it than evil. It's evil. And I say that to say this, is that when we have experienced such violation and such evil perpetrated against us as a child, we don't understand it. So we think to ourselves, I must have done something. I must have brought this on myself somehow. I must be unlovable because, or else this wouldn't happen. If God existed, then why the hell is he letting this happen to me? If I was loved, then why on earth is this happening to me? Our little no's were disrespected. Our little boundaries were violated. And we blamed ourselves. Psycho Kensho used to blame himself. He did not recognize the absolute fact that he had nothing to do with what happened to him. He was only 3 years old, or maybe 4 at most. I asked him, I said, Psycho Kensho, would you tell a 3-year-old boy that comes to you and says what happened to him and describes the same thing, would you tell that kid that it's his fault? And he said no, he wouldn't. And this is something the Holy Spirit showed me, which is, then why are you continuing to live a life in where you're blaming yourself? Why are you continuing to live a life where you're believing that you're not loved when that's not true? Why are you continuing to believe that you deserve bad things when literally the Bible says God wants to give you all good things? All good things comes from Him. He's gotten a bad rap from us, you guys, including me too. He's gotten a case of mistaken identity, you know. I blamed him for everything. You know, I was like, well, he's in control, so it's all his fault. No, that wasn't until I grew up and I started to realize, well, we were in control. We gave up that power because we were deceived. So he has given us, as humans, as quote-unquote man, you know, he has given us what we desired, and we didn't always desire good things. We desired bad things, you know. We allowed ourselves to be deceived and also to continue to be deceived. That's like that little seed. If we continue to believe, well, I'm not lovable, I'm unworthy, and these things happen to me, so I deserve to be treated like trash. I deserve to not be in a good relationship. I deserve to not be paid well. We believe these things about ourselves, and then as adults, we live that out. We make choices. We get into relationships with people who are not healthy for us because we don't believe that we are lovable. that early violation has left a hole in us. And Psycho Kensho used to have this hole. And I explained to him that the reason that I can relate to him and the reason that I can use the devil's voice and his freaking words so easily when describing what he does and how he is to us, because the devil is so sneaky. He makes us believe these things to separate us, to make us, feel bad about ourselves, and also to not trust. Our trust was broken as children. Those of us who have been abused, those of us who have had childhood trauma of sexual abuse especially, we believe, oh, never trust anybody. And, when I told people, they didn't believe me. So that means no one's ever going to believe me. So why tell the truth at all, And then it snowballs from there. And then we become, not authentic. We become, people pleasers because we don't know when the other shoe is going to drop. We don't know if we're going to be punished, right? And we believe all these things. But once we actually read the Bible and we read the words of God, not what other people has told us about Christianity or what some random pastor said or whatever, when we read it for ourselves, we read Jesus' words, which is, you are the light of the world. You are more precious than any jewels. He shows us that he loves us. We then have to second guess our entire life's belief with this new truth that we find. And Satori is saying a lot of things here, so I'm going to read some of this. Give me 1 second. Satori said there's something to be said about humility. You just can't be loved and be proud of it. Hello, Venus. How are you? Thank you, Kitzel. I still blame myself, Alan says. I feel like I should have killed him, the abuser. Yeah, and that's how it does feel, Valence. But the thing is, your pain would not be over. As much as the devil has you believing, yeah, just kill him and it'll all be over. You'll feel so much better. You won't. You won't, because that particular pain is something that spiritually, emotionally, physically, right, from human touch, it takes time to get over those kinds of things. You can't expect that you're just gonna be over it, right away. Sometimes for some people it takes a lifetime. But that doesn't mean that you will never heal, because Jesus literally said, "Come to me, those of you who are weary, those of you who are burdened, and I will give you rest." He offers to give us that rest. And as somebody who's been in his rest for a couple years now, I can tell you there's no rest. There's no rest. It surpasses understanding, that kind of rest that he has given me, And I feel very, very lucky that I even have that, because I didn't really do anything to deserve this love. I just was born, and made a lot of mistakes and blamed God for a lot of things. But he still loves me, and I dare say Jesus loves all of you. You don't have to necessarily love him back. He doesn't force you to. He just tells you the truth, and not everybody likes to hear that truth. And that's fine. He said, literally, not everybody wants to hear that truth. But I say that to say this is, a lot of times I tell you guys, I care about you, but you don't have to care about me back. I don't need you guys to care about me back. Psycho Kencho now is becoming a man who cares about people, but he doesn't necessarily, it's not a transaction for him anymore. He's not giving with expecting things back. He's just giving. And the reason that he can do that is literally, I think, Jesus, because I've seen that change in him. I've seen him go from, you know, a man who was constantly, you know, just in his toxicity, to someone who's growing in self-awareness of himself, of how he feels. He spent years and years and years denying even his own feelings. Many men grow up being made fun of for having feelings, for expressing emotions. And so they're either like, well, I'm not going to be a man then, since apparently, you know, I'm not allowed to do this, which is false. Any man can feel these things and still be a man, you know. But they got confused, you know. He got confused. He wasn't, now he doesn't know what he's feeling, you know. It takes him some time. Sometimes he, you know, needs a little bit of moment to capture what it is that's going on in his head, what it is that he's feeling. He went from somebody who's blocking all of his emotions to somebody who's actually getting to know a new version of himself. He used drugs, he used all these other things in his bucket, you know, to try and fill that empty space that trauma left him with. He had a giant emptiness there. And for anybody who's in the chat who has a giant emptiness, we can relate to you. I can relate to you. Psycho can relate to you. Builder Z can relate to you. Valence can relate to you, right? Saturi, I don't know if you've ever been through something like this, but obviously Saturi has things to say about this as well. Sergeant Salamander, right? So the devil always has you believing that you're alone and nobody cares about you and nobody actually wants to know about your life, or you're oversharing or whatever. But we're here to tell you that's a lie, you know. You're not alone. You feel alone, but you're not alone. There's 9 other people in this chat alone who has experienced what you're experiencing, right? So don't let the devil have you over there thinking that you're alone in this, because you're not alone. It's the lie that you are alone that hurts also, because it only serves to reinforce your belief that you're unwanted and unlovable and unworthy, and that's literally all a lie. Saturi says, I think this is really hard, because if blind would lead the blind, who can be pure then? Who can be so righteous to say forgiveness is even deserved? That's Jesus. But then to say to the next person, yes, everything they did was wrong to me, but they belong to God also, that can be tough. That is where it's tough. And Jesus literally says it's going to be tough. But all things can be done through me. And oftentimes we don't remember to go to him, you know, which is, I think, why sometimes, you know, the Bible repeats itself in certain areas. It's because literally we forget. And that's okay. You know, we're human. We forget stuff. But it's there to remind us, you know, you are loved. You deserve love. I created you to love you. You know, you haven't loved me back. Oftentimes, as you guys will read in the Old Testament, we were very, very mean to God. You know, we never wanted to do what he asked of us, because we saw it as quote-unquote control. The devil twisted that on us. He was telling us things oftentimes for our own good. Do not kill. Do not steal. Do not lie. You know, These things will bring not only shame on you, but they bring problems. They bring problems in our lives. I mean, now the evil has gotten so much that we're playing games where our kids are lying for fun. Our kids are playing among us and learning subconsciously that lying, it's okay. They are lying for fun. This is evil. You know what lying does? It does the same thing for them that it did for us. It destroys trust. These children, when they grow up, they're not going to have trust. Psycho Kensho did not trust after everything that happened to him. He hated men. He hated women because he had a strained relationship with his mom. She didn't believe him. I too had a strained relationship with my mom. She couldn't believe me either. You know? And these type of things, they only serve to reinforce a false belief that the enemy gives us, that we are unlovable, that no one will respect us. Because our little no's, our little screams of stop, and our little boundaries of being when we were young was violated. And some of us multiple times. I don't know who's out there in the chat, but some of us multiple times. Psycho Kensho, was one time. But it only takes one time. And nobody here is like saying, well, it was multiple times, so it's worse. No, it should never have happened to any of us. Any of us. No child deserves for their little growing boundaries to be violated. Every child should have their no be as lovable as their yes. That is how you create a child who can have healthy relationships. Accepting their little young growing no. And especially not being perverted with them or trying to touch them or look at them in any strange way. They don't deserve that. They deserve our protection. And I'm not gonna talk on this for long, but now AI is out there assaulting children and raping children. If you want to know more about that, please message me in Discord. But I say that to say this. Those of you out there who are not believing that you are loved by God, it is in the Bible. And if you're like, well, I'm gay, God doesn't love me because I'm gay, or I'm LGBTQ, IA plus or whatever, so God doesn't love me, there's no chance for me, I'm going to hell anyway. None of that is true. You have a chance with Jesus. Jesus was there for those who would accept him and believe in him. He died for this as the final sacrifice. If we're gonna choose to keep on sinning, that's our choice also. And then there is no sacrifice left for those who want to keep sinning. But if you turn from your sins, or you just even want to get to know Jesus, he's there. He's there. Open a Bible anywhere and you can read about him. Even if you don't read any of the other books, and you read Matthew and you start there, that's where I started. That's where I got to know this guy Jesus. Because I only heard about him, And I basically grew up thinking, well, if there is a God, then he hates me, so I hate him back. I never believed in God. And how could I? I was abused, I had that little seed planted. I believed I was unlovable. I already believed I would never trust anybody. I already believed somebody will always abandon me. And the devil still exploits those little seeds whenever he gets a chance. But the difference is now that I have a relationship with Jesus, now that I know the truth, that I will be loved, that I am lovable, that I have always been loved, and that I'm more precious than any jewels on this earth, now that I actually can say I believe that, it doesn't last as long. You know, the devil can't exploit me for as long as he used to. And I do hope, you know, for everybody who's in that fight, you know, especially with low self-esteem, with toxic relationship patterns and all these things, addiction, you know, slavery to addiction. I can relate to these things because I was there. I was that person, you know. And with Psycho Kencho, as he's growing in his self-awareness, I can see the changes that the Holy Spirit is making in him. Is he perfect? No. Does he curse up a storm every time that we have played games with him? You guys already know the answer to that. You know, is he over there still making fun of people and doing toxic stuff? Sure. But is he on the path? Yeah, I think he is. Is he on a journey of his own that none of us can judge? Yeah, I would say he is. And the most important thing is he finding love with Jesus? And that's a resounding yes that I think even he could put in the chat for you guys. And he's becoming more and more sure of it. And that's a beautiful thing to see from a kid who believed that no one would ever love him, that he would never have a father, that he would never be truly cherished or seen as precious, and that he would never, ever, ever get back his innocence. He's doing all those things with Jesus, because those are the kind of healings, not just physical healings like my cancer situation or my aneurysm, but emotional healings that is all over the place if we're just willing to look. And you know, there's so many hurting people out there, so many people who have been experiencing suffering, you know, whether it's as a child or even as an adult. And we put that on ourselves when we are the victim. If you would not tell someone else or blame someone else for something terrible that has happened to them, why on earth would you consider even blaming yourself for something terrible that has happened to you? You're the victim. You deserve the comfort. You deserve the self-love. And Jesus says, come to me, those of you who are weary, and those of you who are burdened, and I will give you rest, because I am humble and lowly in heart. He's humble. He's lowly. These are qualities that we want to have. We want to be humble. When we are humble, forgiveness comes easier. When we're proud, you know, we're full of anger oftentimes. We behave in ways that are selfish when we're proud. And I'm not talking about LGBTQ plus pride. I'm talking about proud as in selfishness and proud as in arrogance. These are not qualities that are beautiful in a person, and they don't lead for us to be able to have good relationship. When someone possesses these qualities, we don't have good relationships with them because they're selfish, they're self-serving, and they're arrogant, and they don't care about us. And being with them only reinforces, like I said, that little early childhood seed that we are not worthy when that's not true. All we need to do is make new choices. And part of that is becoming more loving and gentle with ourselves, more humble and caring about ourselves, not necessarily in a selfish way where we're only focused on ourselves, but when we focus on Jesus, He changes us. And I don't know how He does it, really. I can't fathom the mystery of, how He does it, but I've seen it, and I personally think it's beautiful. And I hope that, if you guys are going to choose to spend your life with someone, I hope it's going to be someone who has the qualities of the book of Proverbs, because that contains so much dating wisdom. If you guys ever want me to do a study with you on that, or a stream on that, dating Mr. or Mrs. Right via the book of Proverbs, I'm happy to do that, because I have done a lot of work in that area and a lot of study on that particular book as well. And that book changed my life. It changed my dating. It changed the way I love. It changed everything. Let me see what Satori says. Oh, respect. However, this is God's fight, and everyone stands humble when faced with death. But nobody can overcome death. No human, right? Yeah. But love alone is capable to overcome in life. It does overcome many, many things in life, and it's amazing to see, when it is true love, when not self-serving, nonsense that the media calls love, which is actually infatuation, but that's another stream. Valen says, coming from the experience, the reason why most people blame themselves is because they feel disgusting. Absolutely. Say it louder for the people in the back. And they feel disgusting because they are literally, to themselves, feeling unworthy, unloved, and they were treated badly. And they internalize that rather than externalize that like they should. But you know why they don't? Because they're young. They don't have the mindset yet to understand, oh, this was not my fault. Oh, I'm living in a world where actually sometimes bad things happen, even if it's not deserved. I didn't deserve this. There's nothing wrong with me. It's this person's fault. But when we're young, we don't know that. We internalize everything. Sadhuri says, I talk about this a lot in personal spaces, especially with feminism and gender wars. The common for males to feel invaluable in society tells us that we're only as good as we are useful. Absolutely. Yes. I have noticed that, little secret message as well. And that is society that does that. God does not say that. Maybe because we're a soldier, or because we're in service to some company, we have to work to provide, and this weighs on the male conscience. Yes, I have seen that. But then if you think it differently with harmony, when it works together, it gets put in service where it's received, rewarded, and respected. The thing is, it goes both ways, and it should be received, rewarded, and respected as well. I also think 99% or something close are not evil. Some are hungry for power over others. Yeah, and in the society that we're living in right now, I feel like the people who are power hungry are the ones who have, quote unquote, the spotlight. But not everyone is like that. And that, in a way, the media is to blame for that, for what we see. But we can take control over our own eyes and take back our eyes by being more proactive in what we allow ourselves to be exposed to, especially on the media. And Jesus also mentioned that. He said, guard your eyes, right? He specifically admonished us as believers, watch your eyes, watch what your eyes are seeing and what you're believing and things like that, because it can lead you astray. And I think we're seeing that, a lot of the things we're seeing, and also that we're allowing our children to see, does not lead to a good place, you guys. And for most people do not cause these things what made our society become toxic. You could be alive in 2025 and not be affected by some evil choices done long ago. Absolutely. That's very true. With the exception of possibly some babies, because they haven't been alive very long, like little 2 or 3 month olds. But we sometimes need this reminder, this is not your fault. Yeah, we need to remind each other, hey, what you up to today? Oh, not much. Just reminding you, this is not your fault. I think if you have love, it doesn't matter anymore if you receive it back. You already have it all. Life becomes temporary. Today is a chance to love again. Yeah, this life, well, for those who are spiritual, this life is temporary, in that sense. And there's definitely value to this life. It doesn't suddenly become, worthless. But having our focus here is not as fruitful as it can be when we're focused on things in a larger scheme, or in, as they would say, eternally minded. But despite what some people might think about this Jesus, the thing is, if we didn't have Jesus, we wouldn't even have human rights. We would not have philosophy from centuries that even says people are equal and that they deserve to be free. None of this exists without Jesus. Without Jesus, science doesn't exist, believe it or not. The origin of science was philosophers who said, can we explain God? Not, God is not real. Love has brought this for us. Without it, we would not have freedom of thought, freedom of choice, and basis that says to be human is to question. What Jesus gives us is that there is a sanctity in even being human, but it's not possible if it's not meant for everyone. That's a very interesting take, Saturi, that I would like to talk to you more about. Valen says, the thing that changed my mind to stop hating myself and wanting to die was that when you cried, he was always there with you. Yeah, same. For me, it was that too. It's like, back when I was a kid and I was going through it and I was thinking I was unwanted and I would always be unloved and that, God didn't exist and all this type of stuff. And if he did, he hated me and all this kind of thing. Was once I got to know him, I realized all these things I thought about you, like, it was hearsay, everything that I thought about God, that I thought about Jesus, it was all hearsay. I didn't actually know him. I didn't actually even have a relationship with him. Even if I had gone to church, I dare say there are people calling themselves Christian that are in church that do not have an actual relationship with Jesus. Nothing in their life points to showing that Jesus is there, that Jesus talks to them, that they read the Bible and hear what God actually has said versus what they've heard he said, or, taken in a different way or twisted. Especially the devil loves to twist God's word for another meaning or whatever. And I think that, finding that God was always there with us, even through that trial, and that he saw us, he heard us, and it validates us, is so powerful, Also, it says in the Bible that I think who shall ever lead my children astray would be better off putting a millstone around their neck. Yes, I remember reading that, and I was like, ooh, I definitely would not want to be responsible for being a leader of a church or something like that, because oh my gosh, there is so much responsibility to that, and I don't know that people are taking it seriously these days. I really don't. Satori says, I had friends growing up who were LGBTQ+. I was not really, but my best friend was Les, and sometimes we liked the same girl. In high school, at least, I used to talk with her about it a lot, because Jesus sees you as a child of God. That love is meant for you too. Exactly. Both Jew and Gentile, and it is because of this. It is because it applies what it means to be human. Yes, through Jesus, yes, both Jew and Gentile were loved, were accepted, were given an opportunity to get to know a holy God. So something I learned back then is, when it came to acceptance of others, in some ways, Jesus is the only example that says you're loved no matter what. Yeah, he really is. You don't even have to be Christian to be loved by God. This is food for thought. I don't know if I agree with that part necessarily, but like I said, a lot of what you have posited here, I would like to talk with you more about this. And I think it's great that you're, typing as much as you are in the chat, because that just shows me that, you're engaged in this and you're passionate about this. Whether or not you yourself have had a childhood trauma or not, because, the media will make you guys think, oh, everybody has had a childhood trauma. That's not true. There's a ton of people, who have never had a childhood trauma, who have had great childhoods, who have healthy relationships. But the media tries to show us these toxic, unhealthy, often abusive, and hugely infatuated and possessive type of relationships that has nothing to do with love, or isn't even a true representation of how many, many, many humans live, So we can't allow the media to skew our minds of how we, see the world. And I feel like for all of us, it has done that. But what solidifies how we see the world, and this is what I had a conversation with them to PsychoCancho, is our childhood experiences and how it relates to how we see the world. So, example, if I grow up in an abusive home and I am fatherless, then I'm going to assume that men cannot be trusted, and I'm going to take that belief outside of my home into school. And I'm going to meet teachers, I'm going to meet doctors, I'm going to meet, people. With children, meet all kinds of people, right? But I'm going out there with the belief that everybody cannot be trusted, and I behave a certain way due to that belief system. And now many people are operating with these early belief systems, not only reinforced with their own life experience, but also with the media. And the media has not portrayed relationships of any kind as good. The media has not even portrayed marriage as the beautiful thing that it's meant to be. The media has not portrayed sex as the beautiful thing and a gift that it's meant to be. And even, I dare say, with all these murderous intent type of scenes, the media has not portrayed human life as worthy, as beautiful, and as valuable. as it's meant to be. So the more that we engage in the media, our mindset goes towards that. We curse more. We feel more wary of everybody. We feel like we can't trust everybody. And then coupling that with our own experiences, we tend to have the expression of that, which is, not healthy relationships. And the love that Jesus talks about, since we're talking about Jesus in the chat, that type of love is seen as bad when it's actually good. Bad things are portrayed as so-called good things or desirable things, and good things are made fun of. Good things are portrayed as, something else, something to be mocked. Just as Jesus, with his loving, healing, kind, and humble self, was mocked and then killed. He was murdered by religious leaders who hated the truth that he spoke. Religious leaders, for those of you out there who are thinking, oh yeah, I follow the Jesus religion. No, Jesus was not being a religion. Jesus was not, intending on being worshipped and all these things. He said, worship the Father, love the Father, look at me in essence with the Father that sent me. If you know me, then you know the Father. If you have me and accept me, then you have, right, the Father. He was barely, if ever, talking about, us loving him or worshiping him or anything like that. He never said any of those things. I think in context that is, but it's not okay. So don't be a Christian either. What I mean is that it points that simply is not the path. Love is the path. God's love is not a religion. It's a set of rules to follow. But it's more than that. It's truth, how it finds its way into your life. Automod is holding a message. What is the message? And in the Bible verse, but we have it. I will allow this. I don't know why it denied this. I think it's because I don't want people to say, what is your name? And so that's why it stopped you, but I'll allow this, Satori. And Aslan lurks in there with a pew, pew, pew. Hello, Aslan. Welcome in. So I'll say that to say this, you guys, why I didn't think I was going to be talking about this as long as I have. I'm going to read a couple of verses. One here that Jesus has said that Satori is quoting. So let's read it, but let's read it in its context, right? Because we don't want to assume that we know what he said or what he meant until we actually read it. And I'm not going to translate it for you guys because I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm learning with you guys, if anything. Okay. So here Jesus says, and we'll read the context and another one. So he's quoting here, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many then will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. So this definitely causes me to want to know, okay, who's he talking to? What did he say before this? What did he say after, right? And this is what he said right before that, 7:21. Okay. He was talking about false prophets. And I think we've seen a lot of those in our time, you guys. So he says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. Everyone who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Which of you, if he asks for a fish, will instead give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who ask him? So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Enter then through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road to life, and only a few find it. Watch out then for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. It is by their fruit that you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes, or pick figs from thistles? Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons? And in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on a rock. The rain came down, streams rose up, winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain comes down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their own teachers of the law. So that's the context of what your quote was. And now you probably can get a better understanding of that quote, who he was talking to, why he was saying these things, and what he said before and after. Oftentimes, if we don't have context, we really can't know the meaning of something. And I feel like with the Bible, that's just as true as with any historical document. We need to know the context of things. It's very important. Saturi says, I heard a university professor do a speech about that lecture. He noted that a defining difference between Christianity and other beliefs is that to be a Christian is not about the amount of good you do. Right. Christians believe in love and forgiveness. It is justice. But you don't play that game really good and then go to win a prize. it includes, because saying you are a Christian is different than being or doing Christian actions, Christian choices, Christian words, etc. If you try to measure this or try to say that it's your identity, like I'm such a righteous person, it will not work. So there's a lot of that which goes hand in hand with humility. Yes, and a lot of that, doing Christian action is kind of like what Jesus says here. You will know them by their fruit. I think with Christians, you also will know them by their fruit, And does that mean all their fruit is going to be perfect? No, but does that mean that their fruit is going to be good? Yes. And that is the result of their relationships, the result of their lives. The closer that they get to Jesus, I feel like you start to see it more and more. And I think, I've noticed that even with fur missile and with psychocancho, with myself, when we're, with God or spending time with God, we're different. We're not like completely changed immediately overnight. Some things have changed completely overnight, but some things, it takes a little bit longer, Hi, Venus. It's been a while. It's me, Azumi. Hello, Azumi. Good to see you, by the way. How you been? Satori says, I don't have all the answers here either, but I have started to try and see it this way, which is the life is a gift. Life is absolutely a gift, And being able to, in my perspective, I can't speak for other people, but in my perspective, serving Christ, being submitted to Christ, for me has been a gift. Did I always see it that way? Nah, I didn't. Especially when I first got sick, you would not be hearing any of this from me. I was super, super angry, and I'm no Job who's like blameless and, never saying anything to God about all the terrible things that happened. I was definitely a hater at one point, but I still understood the sovereignty of God. And I still, as angry as I was, I still, did my best to at least tell other people when I spoke about him or was asked about him. I didn't have anything bad to say for them, for their relationship with him, even though I myself was, suffering so much in my eyes back then. Hello, Mastermind GA. Was your ears ringing last week? I was talking about you. Welcome back, by the way. But I will say this, as I have read the Bible more and as I've gotten closer to God through reading the Bible and really trying to understand it, there has been changes in me, There has been a lot of changes in me. There's been a lot of changes in my life and even how I've seen my illness, If I read you guys my diary from 2017 to now, you guys would be reading words from a very different Venus, And I had a lot of questions for God. I was so mad, because back then I thought I knew him. I thought I had a relationship with him. No. What I have realized is that it took time to get to have the relationship with him that I have now, and for it to show, not just from me saying it, but from me wanting to be like him. And even sometimes it hurts, But then I read about, he was hurt too, He had people who hated him. He had people who he cared about, who he loved, and he was relying on them, and they fell asleep on him, right before he was about to be murdered. And these type of things remind me, like, The devil's lying. I'm not alone. I'm in good company. I still have Jesus in my life, and that's why I'm doing the Lent thing, because so much good has come out of it, you guys. And hopefully, if you guys know me for more than a couple years and I don't drastically fall away from God, hopefully you guys in a couple years from now will be like, you know what, Venus, we've seen you change over time. And maybe I'll be even more like him. Who knows, But I definitely, whatever good I get from my relationship with him, I share it with everyone, If they'll let me, I do try to, show that love to other people, show that acceptance to other people, show even forgiveness to other people. And even today, it was hard to forgive, And I have not forgiven my landlord for what he is doing to us right now. I will tell you guys that. But I have forgiven somebody else that I probably wasn't going to be forgiving, And I know how hard that can be. When somebody hurts you, you don't just immediately spring to want to forgive them. It's not a natural response for us many times because we've seen so much, retribution happen in media, or how we've grown up, or if we've grown up with abuse. We've seen retribution. We've seen punishment. You do this to me, I'm going to do XYZ back to you, But this is not the way of Jesus. Jesus was not like that. And Mastermind GA says, what? You had food poisoning? I'm so sorry to hear that, Mastermind GA. Are you doing better? Satori says, remember, Venus, we also have to forgive ourselves. Not to say, I would like to do wrong now, but in order to heal, you have to realize your own fragility, your imperfection. Yeah, that's true. And being honest with yourself about your shortcomings, and being honest with yourself about your imperfections, and being honest with yourself about your own fragility only comes after we start to come to accept ourselves. And when we can accept ourselves, you know what comes after that? We're able to give that acceptance to other people. When we do have love in our lives, even if it's from our higher power, right? Even if it's from God, or if you're in 12-step, your higher power, right? When you come to that point of loving yourself and starting to forgive yourself, it becomes easier also to forgive others. It becomes easier to allow for other people to make mistakes when you yourself recognize, you know what, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm not perfect here. I need to give some grace and forgiveness to this other person because I'm judging them, and I'm not better than them. It's not up to me to judge. And speaking again of Matthew 7, which Satori just showed us, right before that part about ask, seek, and knock, how I will give you all good things, Jesus says, do not judge, or you too will be judged. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. And with whatever measure you have used, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at a speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and yet pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own eye? Hypocrite. First take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. We have no place to judge anybody because we're not better than them. The judging is left up to the Father. Even Jesus was not here passing judgment in a sense. Jesus was telling us not to pass judgment, right? And why? Because this also causes separation for us. Us being hypocrites causes separation for us. It is a good thing that he tells us not to judge. It's a good thing when he reminds us, ask, seek, and knock, and it will be given to you. It's a good thing when he reminds us, which one of you, if you ask for bread, will give him a stone? We won't. We give good gifts to our children, and yet we think God is to blame for all the bad in our lives. He's not. He's the one giving good gifts, including even the sun that shines. He shines that sun on evil and on good people. He gives us rain in due season on the evil and also on good people. He's the one giving us good things. He's had a rough go of it. We've had a case of mistaken identity with God. We've often blamed him for the terrible things that happen to us in our lives when it's not his fault. And many times we also blame ourselves for things that have happened to us when it's not our fault that those things happen to us. Especially if we were children. So I want you guys, if you can, even if you don't necessarily believe in what I have read to you tonight, even if you're like, oh, I don't believe in Jesus, I don't want to believe in God, that's fine. But take away this for tonight. If you're going to take away anything, take away the fact that you have and there is a creator who has said, I want to give you good gifts. I am the one who gives you good gifts. Ask, seek, and knock. Come to me, those of you who are weary and tired and brokenhearted, for I will give you rest. These things were not just said to the one special person who's perfect. This was said to literally everyone, and that applies to you too. Satori says, wow, yeah, it is mistaken identity, so true. Yeah, and I even wrote a song about it. Once I realized, like, yo, this is a case of mistaken identity that I have had with the Father all these years. It's not his fault. He hasn't been doing this to me. I was wrong. And recognizing that, seeing how much he loved me and how, these evil forces twisted my idea of his love for me, twisted my idea that I even could be loved. I was like, that's it. I'm done blaming him. He's not responsible for these things. And when I got to that point, I also was able to stop blaming myself for things that I too was not responsible. I was not responsible for me being raped, right? I was a child. I was not responsible for being abused because I wasn't able to do my ABCs on time or properly, or to the expectation of somebody else who was also, by the way, imperfect and had no place judging. So I say that to say this: if I can recognize that I was not responsible for those things, then you know what? I'm not responsible for if somebody now, today, treats me harshly. I'm not going to blame myself for somebody else's words because they're just like me. They're not better than me. Somebody out there, any of you guys who, hear people talk about you or whatever, and you're taking that so personally and you're personalizing that to yourself, as Psycho Kensho once did with his mom, as well as I did with my dad, right? Those things are not true. They're the opinion of one person, and that person is not somebody whose approval we need anymore. It's God's approval that we choose to get as adults. When we were a child, we thought, oh, if my parents don't love me, then I'm unlovable. That's not true. All of us have been loved at some point by somebody else, and it wasn't our parents. But we need this reminder, right? We need a Venus reminding us you have been loved, which means you will be loved again. And here's, to some people's belief, the God of the universe reminding you, I love you. I gave my only son for you. You're not unloved. Stop believing this lie. And there's a freedom there when we do, start really recognizing that acceptance and living that radical acceptance life of loving not only ourselves and taking care of ourselves and not allowing abusive people into our lives, not allowing people to continue to hurt us, dusting off of off our feet when those who do not want to accept our love are around us. We start to have better lives. Our lives actually improve. The people we choose to be in our lives also improves. And now I know you guys are probably out there like, okay, Venus, we don't care about this. But if I don't tell you guys, I'm not gonna be able to live with myself, not at least mentioning all these amazing things and things that I've learned and gifts that have been given to me, literally from Jesus and from the Father. I used to think I was fatherless. I used to believe that I was abandoned. Psycho Kensho also believed he was abandoned. He was fatherless. And now he has a heavenly Father who is radically in love with him. And he understands that love now. And it's changed him. And some people might be like, what? This invisible man in the sky? You telling me that this invisible man in the sky loves me? You believe all these other things that you're not 100% sure of. Why not believe that you're loved? Why not believe that you're cherished? Why not believe the words that say, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. Everyone who asks receives. Not some or only Christians who ask, or only one or two people who's super amazing who asks receives. It says everyone who asks receives. Satori says, I see God because I see life, and it's all evidence I need to know that this was all created by something. I told myself once that we already live in a miracle. So maybe the only choice is that we are grateful. Or do we want to poison it and spiral into darkness? If you like a big steak dinner, then be grateful that the earth gave you this to have life at all. So even if you can explain it, it means more to experience it. A healing journey is a bit more of this, realizing you're designed with hunger and needs, and your desire being healthy, and that nature is orchestrated to bring you to this, and that earth is made by our Creator. Yeah. And it's lovingly made. I mean, if you look around, anybody who likes biology like I do, it's fascinating. to look at the processes of the earth. It's mind-boggling to think that it's not created, by an artist, right? The earth is, obviously we're not doing a good job always of taking care of it right now, but the earth is so beautiful. All the things we have in VR doesn't even hold a candle to what the eye can see and the capability of what the eye can view or how the eye views. I've seen things through cameras, and they're very, very good cameras, but they never capture the power and magnitude and sheer majesty of this earth and all places around the earth, not just like one or two places that are beautiful. There's so many places. And our current society has us locked indoors. We need to go outside and see the beauty to remind us that it's out there, because we can forget, right? We can forget while trapped in our houses, on our little games, in our little VR worlds. There's so much beauty just outside. I don't know if you guys have seen Wall-E, but we have to take the glasses off. We have to get off, the BL ship to see that the earth still has life. The earth still has hope. There's still, it's not all what we see on our phones, or on our giant screens. That's the media showing us what they want us to see. But there's so much beauty outside just around us if we just take a chance to connect and to love another, to choose love. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about love. They're not the same thing. Love is something you give, and you don't necessarily have to give it back. It's a gift. It's not a transaction like infatuation is. You make me feel this way, or I want this from you, and so I'll do this if you do this. No, that's not what we described earlier. Love is something that you give as a gift. You give it without expecting anything back. And the way that love is for so many people is foreign, and that is because they don't know Jesus. They don't know that love. They haven't experienced that love. So how can we say anything to them? How can we be like, oh, you're a terrible person because you have not found love? No. It's literally just a matter of being compassionate and recognizing, this person probably hasn't had this kind of love. And that's a very good reason why they can't give it either. We don't need to hate on that person or whatever. We just need to keep it trucking, We just need to keep on loving. We don't have to keep choosing people to love that don't love us back or that can't. And that's another stream. We'll keep that for another time. But Psycho Kencho, was there anything else that you wanted me to touch on about what we talked about today with the childhood trauma that I didn't get from what we talked about as well? Can you message in the chat if you're not too shy? Oh no. Oh no, I just lost chat. Can you guys still hear me and things? Okay, well, it's fine if you guys can't or if I lost you guys, but I do want to say at least a humble thank you to Psycho Kencho for allowing me to share this very personal story. as well as his healing journey, which, he's still on and may be on for possibly the course of his life. I do hope that I'll still know him as he continues on his way. And I hope that you guys will also still know me as I continue on my journey, because I can't stress this enough, and I don't know why people think this about me, but I am not perfect. Please don't put me on a pedestal and assume that I'm amazing, I'm an amazing person or whatever, because anything amazing about me is literally for what I have learned from God, what I have experienced, and what I have chosen to share with someone else, whoever actually is willing to accept it. So I say that to say this is that anybody who's out there who has experienced childhood trauma, I hope that my story and Psycho Kensho's story inspires you to not be ashamed of sharing your story. And as you saw with Z, who said they wear their story on their sleeve, and that is an empowerment for them. That's a beautiful thing, because when we do share these stories, one, we don't allow the perpetrator to get away with what they've done. We hold them accountable by sharing our story, as hard as it is, as painful as it is. By actually sharing our story, we also share the accountability of the perpetrator and what they've done. Because we're no longer assuming this is my fault, I need to be ashamed, I can't share this, this happened to me, versus I somehow made this happen. There's a power there, and I want that for all of you guys. And when you get to that point where you are empowered to be able to share that story, it doesn't not have to even be publicly, by the way. I'm not saying everybody should be, sharing it publicly. What I am saying is, at some point, you can share it and not be ashamed, because you recognize that this was done to you. You did not do anything to cause it. You were an innocent, and you were also a victim. Do you have to live as that victim for the rest of your life? In a sense, yes, and in a sense, no. Because yes, you will always be that victim that you were for the rest of your life, since it did happen to you. But no, you are no longer beholden to the shame that experience gave you at that time. You can move through that. You can heal from that. And I hope that for all of you, I want that for all of you. I want, for all of you to be able to get to the point where you are empowered to be able to heal from those chains that bind you. And that's why I have the daily broken chains. That's why I have broken chains as the redeem, because, that's what this channel was meant to be. This channel was meant to be chain breaking. And I believe that awareness and resources and learning frees us from those things. So if I can help in any way in that area, I would love to.